through the from the Malaysians.
Testing Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk to Bruce Klingner. Klingner, more on this issue. Senior fellow, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, conservative political think tank. Former deputy division chief for Korea at the CIA, so he knows a thing or two about the peninsula. Bruce, thank you for joining all of us on the program. By the way, the U.S. still needs an ambassador, so if you want to throw your hat into the ring, please do so ASAP. What do you think of these latest revelations on North Korea? Mr. Happy, easygoing Mr. Kim, and yet Heather Nauert just over at State just announced new sanctions because they determined it really was VX that killed Kim Jong-nam.
Right. Well, I think you'll have to add me to the skeptical camp that you were talking about before. I've been following North Korea for 24 years, and it really seems to be a case of, we've seen this movie before, but, that's not to say we shouldn't go back into the theater and hope for a different ending. So, the North Koreans have said they're willing to denuclearize, but I think the first step is we need to make sure that they in fact agreed to what South Korea claims they agreed to. Oftentimes when the Koreas meet, there will be different interpretations or different claims as to what was agreed to. So that'll be the first step. And of course, North Korea is required to denuclearize under 10 or 11 UN resolutions. And of course, they promised in 8 previous agreements to first never build nuclear weapons and then to give up the weapons they promised never to build.
Bruce, you talk about confirming that North Korea did agree to what South Korea claims to have agreed to. I mean, it sounds like you think that South Korea, President Moon Jae-in, may have given up a little too much in its eagerness to get these talks going. You say his predecessors were largely one-sided concessions to the North without sufficient demands for conditionality, reciprocity, and transparency. What do you make of South Korea's role in all of this and trying to get the two sides to talk?
Well, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is very eager to move forward with reconciliation. Remember back in December, it seemed like we were on this inevitable path towards a military clash, perhaps brought on by a U.S. preventative attack. And then, sort of like changing from seasons in the Game of Thrones show, all of a sudden we switch from, inevitable clash to now focus on diplomacy. But in the meantime, the army in the north is still building up its forces, and it's not, willing to give those up quite yet. And then when they talk about needing security guarantees, the U.S. has provided over the years a long list of security guarantees, all to no avail. And when North Korea talks about a U.S. hostile policy, over the years that has included a long list of demands on security issues, diplomatic, economic, and even sort of complaining about South Korean freedom of the press and freedom of assembly if it's critical of the North.
Bruce, is North Korea done in terms of its ICBM testing as of November last year, or are they trying to buy time so that they can, perfect the leftover technology by, doing all this since the new year?
Well, when Kim Jong-un claimed in his New Year's Day speech that they had successfully completed the ICBM program, that led some experts to say, well, then they won't do any ICBM testing, but they may still do other range missiles, IRBMs, et cetera. They have a number of other systems that are still in development and not deployed. But Kim Jong-un really hasn't demonstrated to the satisfaction of everyone else that he actually has a viable ICBM. People point to that he hasn't demonstrated a re-entry vehicle, the thing that protects a nuclear warhead when it comes back into the atmosphere. They haven't really demonstrated that, so many of us think that they're still going to be doing at least one or more ICBM tests, and then all those other systems that are still in development.
Bruce, you talk about having heard the story before. You were over at the CIA, the Korea head really, during the Clinton administration, where we saw the agreed framework, which eventually fell through here. Has anything changed this time around?
I think people are much more cynical and skeptical. We've had subsequent agreements since the agreed framework, which of course failed because North Korea was cheating. It cheated on the 4 initial agreements. We've done things like we've tried a freeze for freeze. We called it the Leap Day Agreement. It was February of 2012. That collapsed, and the 6-party talks, the 3 different versions of the joint statement, all failed to impede North Korea in its program. So, you know, in a way, when people talk about, well, what can we offer North Korea, you can really just look back to the long list of things that we have offered them in the past, again, all of which failed to get them to abandon their nuclear arsenal.
So I think it's safe to say that we all established a lot of skepticism out there regarding North Korea's attitude or the sincerity. But maybe it's out of desperation. So perhaps because they're desperate, they could be sincere this time around. What do you say?
Right, and it's something that, you know, we can't ignore this diplomatic initiative that really the 2 Koreas are bringing about. So the U.S. right now is a bit on the sidelines. They're watching the 2 Koreas. So clearly an olive branch was extended by Kim Jong-un during his New Year's Day speech, and President Moon quickly grasped at it in order to try to prevent any kind of provocations or even military attacks during the Olympics. And then since then, the mood has changed, and the focus of South Korean President Moon is more now on trying to reduce tensions, maintain this momentum of reconciliation. So, you know, even if we've been bucked off the horse a number of times, it's not to say we shouldn't try to get back on the horse, but we're a little bit more wary than we were in the past.
And perhaps the White House has a lot more on its plate after today. We'll see. We'll continue to watch. Bruce, always appreciate your insights. Bruce Klingner joining us from the Heritage Foundation.